Hello everyone, this is Sosnios and I'm posting another video again on my Facebook channel, which is actually called Kingdom Channel. I post videos on a regular basis on a very important topics, and the purpose of obviously my video is to educate, to train and to bring awareness to our community and to everyone, wherever you are, whatever religion, whatever race, whatever geographical location you're living. What I'm actually sharing will actually give you some kind of understanding and some knowledge as to how some of the changes that is actually going on around us will actually affect you in one way or another. And as you know, the world is actually changing very rapidly around us, and recently I have been posting messages on the issue of the LGBT curriculum that is actually being targeted at young children around the schools. And here in the United Kingdom, it is actually one of the agenda that is actually going on. And this subject has been a great concern for many families. And the school actually, without warning, many schools are actually teaching it right now, even though the government website says that it is actually going to be given as a mandatory lesson from the year 2020, from September 2020, which is not actually very far away from now. It's probably like 10 or 9 months from now. It will be a mandatory subject to primary and secondary school. They will be teaching an LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and also queers, LGBTQ they call them. And it is a great concern. We have to be very concerned, and we have to understand how this is going to affect our children, how it's going to affect our society, how it's going to affect our world, and also in the long run how it's going to affect our generation to come. And we need to be well aware, we need to be well informed, we need to be well trained, and we need to be well prepared for it, because believe it or not, it will affect us in one way or another. And I think the better we're prepared, the better we'll be able to protect our children and our generation, and live a life in the way that God wants us to live. And as you know, as a Christian, we have a religious belief. We have a religious belief. We have a religious background. We actually have the Bible. It's actually one of our foundational lessons that we're going to be learning from. And everything that the LGBT is trying to teach to our children, in one way or another, it is actually stated in the Bible. And the Bible does not actually, accept this as normal, even though they're trying to normalize it. The reason why the LGBT lifestyle is actually trying to be normalized is because there is definitely something that is abnormal about it. And I'm not saying this, to bash against homosexuals or to bash those who are transgender. This is not a personal attack. I'm not trying to attack anyone in person, but I am actually, because this lesson is actually being pushed in our schools, it is actually coming in our territory. Until now, we have been able to coexist, in a way that doesn't actually create conflict. But I believe that in the coming months and in the coming years, it will actually create conflict. It is actually, in some parts of the country, is actually causing a lot of conflict, because a lot of families are not actually very happy about it, because sexuality and also anything to do with morality should actually be left to parents, and the parents should actually be the one to actually train their children, to teach their children up to what is right and what is wrong. This is actually very important to every family, including myself and including of the many thousands and millions of families are out there. They have a great concern that the government is somehow taking the rights of the family, the responsibility of the family, and to train children, to tell children and what is wrong and what is right. And as a Christian, I believe that whatever we call right and whatever we call wrong should actually come, the morality lesson should actually come from the Bible. It shouldn't come from anywhere else. We shouldn't be relying on science. We shouldn't be relying on our schools. We shouldn't be relying on our government to tell us what is wrong and what is not wrong, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. We actually know that Christianity is not a religion that came yesterday. It's been around for a very, very, very long time. In fact, if you go back to Genesis, you could say Christianity existed from Genesis. We always believed that there is a creator, God is a creator, and he is actually the one that gave us the design, the life that we're living. God gave us the design, and there is a design that we have to follow. There is law, there is principles, divine principles that we need to, govern our life by it. We can't govern our life by some kind of science discovery that just came yesterday, who claimed to say, it is possible for a man to become a woman, it is possible for a woman to become a man, the transgender issue, whatever, the LGBT community is claiming, it's not actually supported by the Bible. And as a result, it's not something that we can accept. It's not something that we can allow our children to learn it as if, it is normal, because I believe that it is actually not normal. The Bible states it very clearly that it's not normal. So I just want you guys to be aware that this is not an easy issue. This is not something that we look at lightly. This is something that should really be dear to our heart, and we should really be prepared, and we should learn how to actually raise our children in the way that they should grow. If you read the book of Proverbs chapter 22 verse 6 says that train up a child in the way he should go. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. So Proverbs chapter 22 verse 6 is warning us, is giving us a warning, is telling you that train your child in the way that he should go, in the way that he should grow. I mean, it is very simple. How do we raise our child? We should raise our child in the way that the Bible itself instructs us to raise our children. And I'm going to share with you what are some of the things that the LGBT curriculum is actually bringing to our school. It is actually very important to understand that I've looked at the curriculums and I've looked at everything that they're planning to teach, and it is really shocking. Some of the lessons that's going to be taught to our children is going to literally, they're trying to literally corrupt, or they're trying to literally reprogram the perception reality of children, how they perceive the world and how they perceive themselves and how they perceive other people and how they perceive family and gender and sex and sexuality. These are actually the three most important things that they are actually focusing on to. And I want you to read what I'm writing right on my side, because I want you to focus on the lessons. And I've looked at everything that they're going to be teaching at primary and secondary school. There are three main areas that this is actually focusing on to, and the three main areas are family, gender, and sex and sexuality. And if you really look at these things in the Bible, if you sit down and learn the Bible very well, that we humans are actually, we are who we are because of these three things. Because of family, the family structure, the family life, the family design is probably one of the greatest design that God has actually created. It is actually something that needs to be kept very carefully, because anything that is dysfunctional in family will actually bring some kind of dysfunctionality in society itself. A lot of the murderers and the rapists and a lot of the bad things that people do, their character, somehow they're actually raised in somebody's house. They're actually raised in somebody's family. They're a product of a family. So how we raise our children is going to impact society in one way or another. So in many problems, in the mental illness and the many antisocial behaviors and the problems that we're actually facing right now, is, if we really go back to it, the root is it begins in the family. If there's a problem in the family, then there's going to be a problem in society. If the family is managed properly, then it's going to have a very positive impact on society itself. Some of the nicest people and the good people and the most educated people and people who have a good morality, they were actually raised in a family, in somebody's family. Somebody has been a very good role model. Somebody has been a very good teacher. Somebody has been a very good friend. Somebody has been a very good dad, a very good mom to that person. And that impact has actually, produced a ripple effect. It actually, when someone is raised in the right way in a family, then he becomes, or that person becomes a blessing to the society and to the world around us. So, family is a very important structure. They're actually literally trying to corrupt the perception reality of family by putting men and men and women as dads. There are actually children in the schools right now who are actually being raised by same-sex couples, by same-sex parents. And, when I was growing up, we never heard of such a thing. We never had any friend, we never had anyone around us, who was raised by a same-sex couple. Everyone was raised by a mom and dad. They may, even if a mom or if a dad is not around the house, at least they're raised by a single parent, and there was never of a mix-up of, the order of a family. The structure of a family is one of the most important things in the Bible. This is what makes us human. This is what makes us human. If you want to become somebody that is actually very productive and very useful person to the society, the family structure that we grow up with has everything to do with it. Everything to do with it. So we really have to fight for the unit of the family. We need to live in the way that God has organized it. It has always been between a mom and dad, a male and a female. It's never been any other way. You can never put two men or two women together and then, regard them as a parent. You can't, because they cannot reproduce, and it's not God's design. It will actually confuse children, because there are lots of children out there who has a mom and dad. So if you are the only child in the class who has two parents with the same sex, it confuses the other children, and it confuses the children itself who are actually growing in that kind of way. So family is under attack. Let me just put it simply. Family, the structure of a family is under attack. And the LGBT community is actually trying to change this, trying to reconstruct what family is all about. Let me tell you, we can never reconstruct family. Family has always been the way it is. Ever since humans existed, family has always come, under the umbrella of a mom and a dad, a male and a female getting together. That is what is a compatible marriage. It is between a man and a woman. We can never change it. It's not something that, it's not like technology where you progress, where from iPhone 6, you get iPhone 7 and then you get iPhone 8. There's no progress in terms of how families are structured. There's no progress. If there is any progress, it will be the progress within that family structure. The father loving the mother and the mother respecting the father, living together, the sanctity of marriage and sexuality and all that. It is all contained in the beautiful umbrella, in the beautiful institution called family. Family is invented by God himself. It is natural thing, and it is impossible to have any kind of family that is other than from the family that God has already put. So we really need to, we need to dig this into our children. We need to train them that this is the way how family functions, and God is not going to have it any other way. There's going to be judgment. There's going to be a lot of consequences even on society. It's gonna have a lot of negative impact. So family is one of the areas that they're trying to be teaching. They're going to be showing them pictures. There's lots of books that's actually been invented by that's actually been written by homosexuals or by the LGBT community. It has been written to actually educate children, to train or to actually change their perception of reality, showing them different structures of family, different types of family. But there is to be honest, there isn't any different types of family. If we really look at nature, there's only one kind of family. There's always going to be one kind of family. Science or whoever you want to call it, nobody has ever been able to come up with any kind of other families. No, it cannot coexist, it cannot reproduce, it cannot function in the same way that a traditional family or the natural family functions. So the LGBT is actually trying to give us a different sort of family. So we need to be very careful. We need to be very aware of where this family structure is coming from. The second thing they're targeting is gender. Gender. This is again another movement that is going on right now, which is the transgender movement, and it is very highly dangerous. It's probably more dangerous than a same-sex couple family. It's very dangerous because, again, gender is what makes us who we are. You know, we are, you know, I'm a male, and the fact that I'm a male and the fact that I'm masculine by nature, by God's design, is what makes me who I am. And you need to have a very healthy outlook on your gender. You can't just wake up one morning and think, oh, you know, I may be a male, but then I have a female brain. I've heard even pop artists, you know, claiming. I remember one pop artist saying that, you know, he has found out that even though he's a male, that he has a female brain. So he's a little bit of both. He's not really one gender. And this is an ideology that is coming from the LGBT community. It is very dangerous. Many children are actually being confused right now. They're confused. And the number of children who are actually being referred to gender identity clinics is actually increasing. The more this agenda is actually being preached, the more they show it on TV, on social media, and the more, especially when if they're trying to teach it at school, we're gonna have thousands and thousands of children waking up, you know, one morning and say, hey, you know, Daddy, I don't think I'm a boy. I think there's a girl in me. And the confusion, the gender confusion, is a very, very dangerous. Once children are actually infected by this, it is very difficult to actually reprogram their mind and to bring them into the right place. They can be counseled when families are actually willing, but many parents are actually being encouraged just to support their children. If they feel like a female, even though they're born as a male, you know, they're saying that just support them. Just let them be, let them do whatever they want. But it's dangerous. Children should actually be trained to actually think, to perceive life in the way that it should be perceived. Perception of reality is already stated in the Bible, how we should be thinking and how we should be looking at family, how we should be looking at life itself. It is written in the Bible. We don't have to be looking, you know, science, and we don't have to try to figure out, you know, what is gender. Gender is gender. If you are a male, you're a male. If you're a female, you're a female. Now, and I say this with some exceptions, and I know that some people, very rarely, they are born into a condition called an intersex. Now, and I've spoken about this on my previous video. Intersex is very different. Intersex is where people are born in a confused. Their hormones is actually mixed up with the male and the female, you know, chromosome. It is more of a disorder. But through you know, psychological help and some other medication help, it can actually be corrected, and they can actually lead a normal life, even though it has its own struggle, but it is possible to do that. Transgender is an ideology. Transgender is something to do with psychology. It has nothing to do with the physical. It's not because, you know, they grow up one morning and say, hey, Daddy, you know, I'm looking at my body and my body is changing to a female. No, it's a psychological thing. People are actually being in some way influenced to think that way. Society, the places they hang out with, the movies they watch, the friends, or whatever it is something that is actually it is an external influence. And the gender issue is also very dangerous. When children go to a gender identity clinics, if they are given some sort of medication, which is actually, they call it a puberty blocker medication, and if they start taking that, it will affect them. It will affect how they think. It will affect how they look at themselves. And the gender confusion is very great. And as a result of that, the suicidal rate in the transgender community is very high, because the confusion that it brings is very dangerous, especially if they go as far as having a physical surgery. If they physically change themselves, if their private parts, if they had a vagina and they want to change it to a penis, and if the penis actually be cut and then they're given an artificial vagina, that actually messes up life. It's very difficult to actually really, to restore that person. It has a lifelong impact, because this is something that cannot be corrected. Once this is done, there's no going back. A lot of children, a lot of young people, after having such kind of surgery, when they grow up in adulthood, they regret what they have done. And when they try to, detransition back to the sexes that they were, it's very difficult. It's impossible. Because once you have the surgery, it is for life. It's never going to be restored back to the kind of person, that you were before. It's very difficult. And I have seen a lot of testimonies of people who have gone through that kind of thing, and they're trying to correct it, and they're trying to detransition, and they found it very difficult. And that creates, another confusion by itself. So the depression rate is very high, the suicidal rate is very high. And they're saying, let us bring this to the school. Let us teach your children and show them that there could be, maybe they're not the kind of gender that they think they're in. Some parents are actually raising their children in a gender neutral way. They're buying them clothes. Now, some of the shopping malls are actually selling gender neutral clothes. And I'm not talking about a unisex clothes. I'm talking about gender neutral clothes that are actually designed for boys and girls to wear them equally, without any difference, without actually, they're trying to destroy their own understanding of what gender is. And it is very highly dangerous. It is a movement. It is going on across the world. And a lot of young people, especially here in the United Kingdom and also in America, in Canada, in Australia, these things are actually becoming, some kind of movement. So gender is very important. If you have children, because they're targeting this to young children, and if you have children, it is very important, to buy your children this kind of toys. Sorry about the hair. The hair is a little bit messy. My daughter has been messing up her hair. And, boys and girls, this is a male and this is a female. You got to understand that when the Bible says male and female, it is something that can never be changed. When you are a male, you're not just physically male, you're also psychologically male. You're also, biologically male. Inside your body, inside your chromosomes, is printed in every cell of your body that you're a male. And also the same thing with female. Females can never transition to a male, because their body, everything is actually designed for them to function as female. Femininity and masculinity are actually God's design by themselves. That's how God designed us, and He designed us like that on purpose. Okay, and we shouldn't try and change this in any way or in any shape or in any form. This is how God created us. So the Bible says He created them male and female. There's no such thing as gender neutral. There's no such thing as, changing your gender and trying to be something else. No, there isn't. There's only two gender. Those are the male gender and the female gender, and they have to be kept the way they are. These are actually compatible. This is how God created them, and this is how a family should function. Relationship, love, mom and dad, and all these things, they should function as a male and as a female only. And I think this is fair to say, because society has never transitioned and has never transitioned to any different sort of family. Even in the past ages, if you study the history of humanity, it's always functioned as a male and female. We are all a product of a male and a female family, a male and a female chromosome. So that's how it should stay. Anyway, There are lots of books that's written again for children. You have to be careful what kind of books your children bring from school, because there are books that are designed by the LGBT community. It's been written. Stonewall is actually one of the company. It is actually a company that prints books for children, and they're actually sending it in many schools so that children can actually be taught by those books. And so LGBT books are actually many books out there, and we need to be very careful the kind of books that our children read, and the kind of even TV programs and social media. These are all an impact, which I'm going to be speaking about that in my next video. The third thing is sex and sexuality. Let me come to that. Sex and sexuality is a major issue. Again, this is something that's distorted to a completely destructive way. There are schools in Warwickshire, and I heard this on BBC News a few days ago, that in Warwickshire they're actually teaching children about masturbation and also things to do with anal sex and all that. It's very dangerous. It is highly dangerous. And I mean, masturbation is, come on. I mean, how in the world can you teach children about masturbation? I mean, they don't call it masturbation, they call it just pleasing themselves. And I've read this, I mean, the actual teaching curriculum itself, that it says children can actually, should be encouraged to to touch themselves, touch their private parts, and feel, the joy and the satisfaction they can get out of it. For young children, I mean, I'm talking about children in primary school. Forget about secondary. I mean, in primary school in Warwickshire, in 200 and something schools, they were actually teaching them to actually start touching themselves as normal. They're saying, don't do it on public, don't do it in front of your friends or in front of your parents, but in the privacy of your own bedroom or while you're taking shower, you can actually start touching yourself, and it's your own body. You can do whatever you want with it. What? It's crazy. And many parents were actually very concerned, and some parents actually took their children away from school when those lessons were actually given. They've done the right thing, and there should be a lot of protest about this because they're literally trying to destroy the minds of children. Literally. This is very dangerous because, I mean, I'm not going to get into this, but masturbation by itself has its own impact, has its own psychological effect on children. If they learn these kind of things as a child and learn to masturbate, it will affect their relationship, it will affect their sexual life. So, I mean, this is very concerning, and God knows what is going to be coming in the coming years, because the LGBT issue, the LGBT agenda will actually push all kinds of lessons to be taught to children. And sex and sexuality it's actually well defined by the Bible. I mean, let me make this very simple. The Bible has a lot to say about sexuality. First of all, there's only two sexuality, which is the female and the male sexuality, and also that sexuality is actually put in the family context or in the marriage context. It's in marriage that you experience true, lasting, satisfying sexual life. And sex is something that happens between a man and a woman in a healthy way. And I'm not even talking about some of the unnatural things. Even male and female do unnatural things nowadays, but the natural sex is something that happens between a man and a woman. That is all. I mean, sex is not like a rocket science. You don't really need to sit down and try to study how sex happens. Sex happens between a man and a woman. It's been happening for millions and millions of years, and we are actually a result of that sex. Simply. There's nothing else. We can't add nothing to it, and we can't take away nothing to it. God has already created it. It is a beautiful thing, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying sex. In fact, that is also what God's planned it for. He planned it for pleasure. That is a plan. And when the Bible says God created human and he put them in the Garden of Eden, the word Eden itself means pleasure. In other words, there's nothing wrong with having pleasure, but how you have that pleasure really matters, because the distorted way of having pleasure is very dangerous. It's dangerous psychologically, it's dangerous physically, and it's also dangerous, in the long run. It will affect our eternal life. It will affect our relationship with God. So they're trying to teach all kinds of sexuality. I mean, I'm mentioning masturbation as an example, but anal sex. Anal sex by itself is very dangerous, and I've spoken about this before. Anal sex, is 17 times more likely to transmit disease. Diseases like HIV can be transmitted very easily, because the anal part of our body is not made for sex. It's not. To our body. It's very dangerous, and God doesn't actually approve it. The Bible approves only sex and sexuality between a man and a woman in the healthiest way. So this is also something that we need to, I don't know how we can teach this to children, but especially for our young people, we need to start teaching the correct way of what sex is about. Sex is defined in the Bible. Sex is for procreation, and sex is again for unity, and a man and a wife, a husband and a wife, or a man and a woman, are actually, they come together, they build unity through sexual relationships. So sexual intimacy is for building unity. And the first thing, procreation, and the second thing is for unity. The third thing is actually for pleasure. And I've already spoken about this. So these are the things that's going on, ladies and gentlemen. Parents, you need to be really aware. We need to be well trained on how we raise our children. We need to be well trained. We need to be very careful also allowing our children, to go into social media. And social media is also one factor that's actually corrupting the way that children see family, gender, and sex and sexuality. So you need to be very close. You need to pay close attention to your children and what they're learning. Every time they come from school, you need to ask your children what they have learned. And you can actually challenge. There's actually 5 things you can do. Let me give you that very quickly. There's 5 things that you can do in order between now and September 2020. First of all, you can actually speak to your children's school. I have done that. I've gone to my children, my daughter's school, and I've spoken to them about what they're actually learning. Here in the United Kingdom, it's actually, they call it RSE, which is a relationship and sex education. So you can speak to your child's school, and you can ask what is actually the exact curriculum, the lessons that they're actually learning, and you have the right to know that. And also you can actually go onto your children's school website, and you can find out what they're learning. And if there is something, if there is a lesson that you find that is very dangerous for your child, you have the right to withdraw your child during that lesson. Okay, that is under the government's law, that parents can actually withdraw their child during this relationship and sex education. If they are teaching all this LGBT stuff, you can actually take your child out. You can exercise your right. After September 2020, it's going to be mandatory. They say it's not actually easily possible to take your child out, but you can have a conversation with the school's director, and you could be allowed to take your child out during those lessons. So even after September 2020, we still do have rights to withdraw our children. The third thing you can do is get involved with your child's school. This is actually very important. The school actually calls you for parent meetings. Make sure you attend every parent's meeting, and if you can, if you have the chance, you can actually become a board member, and you can actually put forward your ideas and your religious belief and say, hey, how can this kind of lesson be given to schools, because we have this issue, this religious belief. So it is important to actually to get involved with your children's school in any way that is possible. The fourth thing is signed petition. Every time there's a petition, I posted on my Facebook, sign a petition and trying to make a difference, vote. And also when we need to be against something, we need to go out. When we need to go out for protest, we need to go out. I've done that before, and a few weeks ago we had a protest in Parliament Square, and we need to be there and making our voice heard. And we need to stand up against what we need to stand up against. If we sit down and don't do nothing, I'm telling you, it's going to be very dangerous. So we need to sign petitions, and you can also write to your MP. If you want to go as far as that, you can also write to your MP, and we need to go out for protest. The last thing, you need to build trust and communicate with your children. This is very highly important, because if you don't have a good connection and good relationship with your children, it will, your children, they could be learning things that you don't know. I have met parents whose children are actually being taught LGBT stuff in schools and they didn't know it. So your children can actually be learning something at school that you don't know. So speak to your children, have a good communication with your children, and trying to understand what is going on around them. And you should be following them closely, because you, as a parent, you have a responsibility to guide your child. Don't give your children, all this iPad and iPhone, and then just put them in the bedroom all by themselves. Children nowadays are actually being influenced by social media. They're actually being raised by social media instead of by parents. Parents should be the one raising their children, not social media. Parents should be the one teaching and training their children. It shouldn't be anybody else. We should be the first one to influence our children. So to build a trust and to communicate with your children, to have a close relationship with your children is highly, highly important. Okay. Anyway, I hope this video helps you. Please, whatever you need to do, if you need to like this video, share it on your Facebook, on your WhatsApp, or whatever you have, Instagram, whatever you can share it on. Share this video so that people can actually learn from it, and we can actually spread the message and bring some awareness to all parents out there who needs this message. And thank you very much for listening. And I will be posting other videos, and I've done this in English because I've been requested to do it in English. I normally do it with my native language, but it has been requested that I do it in English, and I wanted young people to listen to it as well. And I will come back for more. I've just given you, a summary of what is coming, and hopefully I will do more videos, and I will try and to educate and to train parents and children on how they should be living and how they should guard themselves from what is coming around us. So I hope you've been blessed by this video. Thank you very much for listening, and this is from Kingdom Channel. God bless you, and I'll see you on my next video.